I'm Alexander Sekalovsky, and here on the spot we have Martin Cubby from the National Tertiary Education Union. Martin Cubby runs the UOW branch of the NTEU, and he's here to chat about the recent UOW subject cuts as well as the many staff cuts the UOW has suffered. So Martin, how's it going?
Good, thanks for having me along, Alec.
Yeah, what's been in the news a lot lately is that UOW has been suffering a ton of cuts, mainly to the language studies. I think we cut Japanese, Spanish, French, as well as Mandarin, and we've also suffered some STEM subject cuts as well, and entire majors have been cut. Could you talk to me a little bit about all the cuts that UOW has suffered?
Well, in recent history, it has been a really difficult time for staff at UOW, University of Wollongong, in relation to the cuts to jobs and subjects, as you've mentioned. The subject cuts from last year, essentially it cut the offering of languages at UOW in half, with no more Asian language subjects offered. We did manage to save some jobs and some subjects through the campaigning of union members, which involved a whole bunch of pressure internally and then externally, including letters from the French ambassador as well to try and save the French subject, which was in part successful. But it has had a devastating effect on staff. People have been losing sleep. Obviously, a number of people, including at least 90 academic staff, have been made redundant recently at the University of Wollongong. And there's another round of cuts proposed, particularly impacting professional staff who do a huge amount to support students at UOW. And there's another 181 jobs which are proposed to be cut. So it's quite a difficult time at UOW, and unfortunately the situation we're in terms of the savings that university management is seeking to make in relation to cutting staff jobs is due to a build-up of really poor management decisions over a period of time, investments that were never really going to pay back in the way that they expected. A lot of that off the back of COVID, which was a difficult situation for everyone in Australia and in the economy.
So it seems like a symptom of COVID that the uni is still trying to recover from. I remember reading up on statistics that UOW put out that, during COVID there was a dip in enrolments, especially in international enrolments, and it was only last year where numbers started to reach back to pre-COVID levels. And I think actually international enrolments rose to be above what they were pre-COVID levels. But now the government has put in place a policy limiting the students coming into the country, and that's cut very deeply into UOW funding, as they've said.
I think that it's more than reasonable to dispute the extent of that impact. There was a lot of budgets set by the university expecting, again, continued growth and quite dramatic growth in relation to international student enrolments. In our view, there's lots of things that can happen around the world that might impact international student enrolments, which we don't agree with this as a funding model, but it is an important funding resource for universities in Australia at this time, Australia's second biggest export industry. However, to budget to say, well, it's only ever going to grow after they've just been through COVID and knowing, things happen in the world and we can't bank on that being a revenue source that's going to have forever more growth is really problematic in terms of management decisions. But we also know now that in 2027 and 2028, the university is due to pay back a bunch of loans that they took out, many of which prior to COVID, for investment in buildings and other things that aren't necessarily at the core of what we should be doing as a university, and that's $375 million that the university is going to have to repay on loans and investments. For us, just saying it's about international student numbers, understandable. There has been a big impact from some very poor decisions in relation to student visa application processes from the current federal government. However, the debt the university has got itself into through projects prior and post-COVID is the key impact on why they're saying they need to save at least $26 million from staff-related savings.
Yeah.
So, and that's on top of the cuts around subjects and academic staff from last year. So that's the reason the NTEU, staff union at UOW, is absolutely determined, whatever happens in the next year at UOW, to pursue our campaign to get proper governance reform in our sector. And that includes having conversations with federal politicians, which we have been, and also at a state level, to try and make sure there's amendments to the state acts, but also movement in terms of the University Accord on governance, to make sure that our universities, our public universities, are running away in the best interests of the community, students and staff.
Thank you so much for letting us put you on the spot.
That's right.
Yep. This has been Alexander Sekulovsky, and tune in back next week for some more The Spot.